In a surprise announcement, Hubris joined the growing list of high-profile ports for the Quest. Visually, it pulls every single drop of power. This is a full, story-based, sprawling epic, and it runs very well, mostly. The PC game is considered sweet, sweet eye candy, and Hubris on Quest 2 is still a stunner. I've never played the PC game, so these first impressions aren't a comparison. You're a new recruit to a unit of militarized peacekeepers, something called the Triple O. Your handlers are pulled from their scheduled R&R to an emergency intervention. So, you're drafted, your ship crashes on the mission, training is over. Now, survive while catching up to the remaining agents and trying to find out what's really going on. In that first hour, Hubris throws a lot of ideas at you. The world feels big and alive and alien and larger than anything we've yet seen on the Quest. After a standout underwater intro with some of the most amazing swim mechanics I've ever experienced in VR, the narrative eases you into the game's 4 core actions. Number 1, climbing and light platforming. 2, swimming. 3, resource gathering and crafting. And 4, combat. Early on, there's a lot of climbing, and mostly Hubris does it really well. Any glowing ledge can be held and scaled. Subtle audio as your hands make contact confirms you're attached. Then, hand over hand, you're climbing, and it works. Which is unlike other games where dismounting from a climb or ladder is always a fail. Hubris fixes this problem by magnetically boosting you. So when you reach the top of a ledge or ladder and push upwards, you're kind of popped to a safe spot. You never have to second guess your positioning. This is incredibly helpful. Most of the time. And that's something you'll hear a lot from this impression. Most of the time. That sums up Hubris pretty well. Most of the time, Hubris is just short of being a great game. The physics engine can be very quirky. An annoying reminder that Hubris could have baked in the oven just a little bit longer. Take the climbing, which I just praised, right? Well, you have to be very careful about where you place your second hand as you follow up. Sometimes placement doesn't register, or your body is too close to the object that you're trying to interact with. The game often has trouble following you and gets a little wonky. Now you're just reaching out all over the place with your other hand, hoping that the game sees it and keeps going. Sometimes it takes a second. Swimming is great, 0 complaints there. It's one of the best things about the game, and more underwater exploration could have been fantastic. Maybe that's in the later levels. Usually, swimming yields resources that you'll repurpose later to upgrade weapons. In Hubris, that would be a plasma pistol, a plasma machine gun, or a plasma shotgun, which I couldn't ever imagine using because if enemies get that close, you're probably already dead. But more on the combat later. Besides swimming and climbing with some occasional platforming, which I have to say is mildly annoying because you don't have legs or feet, it's a best guess to figure out where you'll land. This isn't a big deal most of the time, as jumping usually lands you on broad surfaces. But I can't count how many annoying deaths I had trying to jump on pipes and missing them entirely. Then you fall to your death and reload the area. Again, not the biggest deal since there isn't too much of that in the early game, but it's worth noting. The other recurring task has you collecting various junk. These resources are scavenged and processed in the game's version of a recycling plant where you'll convert that matter into the material you'll need to upgrade your weapons. The world seems smaller and smaller the more you play, and the illusion of exploration that you felt early on is shattered pretty quickly. You collect scraps in the story's pretty linear path, which is fine. This busy work is a nice distraction from avoiding killer drones or evil squids or endless wave of spongy bad guys and murder bugs. These things suck, but this game needs is a blowtorch for real. I guess that brings us to the combat. When you accept that only a tiny bit of exploration and upgrading is as complex as Hubris gets, when you remove all of the cool visuals and sci-fi weirdness, like this organic jiggly rope thing, when it comes down to just the combat, the meat and potatoes, it's kind of bland. It's not bad by any measure, it's just kind of undercooked. Human enemies are just cheap, man. They pop up everywhere, and unless you get headshots, sometimes they take forever to put down. Firing weapons in this game is no fun. There's no animation on the enemies when you fire on them, so it just feels like there's 0 impact until they're dead. They'll flank you and totally maneuver around you, but their weapons seem to hurt a lot more than your weapons. If you're going one-on-one and your shot isn't as good as theirs, you're probably going to die. Power fantasy, this is not. And the weapons just feel flat. Firing doesn't look or feel cool, and it's not accurate. Enemies snipe better than you, so don't let them get close. And that's what I meant about the shotgun earlier. I never wanted it. I tried the machine gun briefly, but it fires so wildly and is so weak that I just stuck with the primary gun and leveled that up. Hubris doesn't have melee or grenades or any other action mechanic than shoot one of these 3 weapons. Combat really is just entering a room and inching forward, trying to spy an enemy hidden anywhere before they take you out. Oh, and don't climb a ladder. That's what I wanted to come back to. The pull mechanic is great most of the time. There were too many situations where I would be in combat and I knew that an enemy was on a level above me. I would climb a ladder hoping to hang with one arm and peek with my gun to take them out. But no, you get anywhere near the top and the game will automatically pop you up right into the fire of these jerks. And then you're dead. That's it. So yeah, combat is the weakest part of Hubris. It's crazy because slight tweaks to the combat would totally change the feel of this game. I guess that developers really wanted to emphasize the sci-fi mood and atmosphere over the pew-pew that dominates gaming today. And really, it's that commitment to atmosphere that I kind of dig. That's what's keeping me playing despite all of the quirks that I talked about earlier. Obviously, I played quite a bit longer than an hour because I enjoyed being in this world. It really is a full AAA type experience on the Quest, and we don't have many of those. Do I think Hubris is a little undercooked? Absolutely. Do I think it's worth the full price on Quest? Yeah, I do. Flaws and all. It's an experience. That's the best way to put it. It might not be as interactive as The Walking Dead or as rich as Ghosts of Tabor, or any of the big boys on the Quest, but it deserves to be in those conversations. It's one of those sum of its parts things. Each part is just okay, but put them all together in this sci-fi gumbo, and it feels a lot more ambitious than you realize as you're going through it. My first impressions? I don't know if this is a great game, but I'll be thinking about it for a very long time. Check it out. Tell me what you think in the comments.